Hey, and welcome to episode 1 of the Digital Discipleship Podcast. Listen, if you can't see it, I'm pretty excited about this. I'm looking forward to this because I've been thinking for a while about a medium and a way that I could take so much of this content around digital discipleship and package it in a way that I could share it with you on a regular basis. And I'm telling you, this is it. The Digital Discipleship Podcast, it's where it's at. I'm going to be dropping some content here every week to help you take some steps forward in leading your church on the journey of discipleship, all right? And so today, to kick us off, I want to start with something I think is really good and relevant. And it's something I called Re-Church. And Re-Church is really a plan to re-energize your church for the future that lies ahead. When we talk about Re-Church, we're talking about, so many churches in America are either plateaued, meaning they're stuck, or they're declining, meaning they're losing people at an alarming rate. And I don't care who you are, every church loses about 10% of its congregation every year for different reasons. People pass away, couples get divorced, people move for their jobs, people get disgruntled, whatever it is, at least 10% leaves every year. And so it doesn't take much to be stuck or declining. If you're only adding as many people as you leave, then you're plateaued, right? If you lose 10 and you gain 10, you're plateaued, you're stuck. If you're losing more people than you gain, then you're declining. If you lose 10 and you only gain 5, then you went from 100 people to 95 people. And so here's what I realized, regardless of where you're at, because of what we've gone through over the last couple of months and the last couple of years as a church, many of us are in need of a restart. And so that's where Re-Church comes into play, right? Well, one of the things you're going to hear me talk about a whole lot is I'm going to be talking about the value of systems. When I talk about systems, I love Nelson Searcy's definition of a system. Saves you stress, time, energy, and money. It's a mechanism that saves you stress, time, energy, and money. And that's what this is really about. I want to help you. I want to help save you some stress, save you some time, save you some energy, and save you some money. And so I'm going to be your virtual consultant. I'm going to be your consultant through this podcast and through this video. I'm going to be here to help you, to help save you some of those things, to help you take some next steps. If you haven't heard my story, you're going to continue. You're going to hear more and more of my story. But I grew up in a family that has been steeped in the church and has been steeped in ministry for years and years and years. And so I'm one of those kids who grew up as a church kid, going to church all the time. I often say my mom had a drug problem because she drugged me to church. She drugged me to Sunday school. She drugged me to Bible study. She drugged me to choir rehearsal. She drugged me to prayer meeting. She drugged me to teachers meeting. Everywhere. If the church was open, I had to be there. And so I grew up in the church. But as I got older, I went off to college at Grambling State University, and I really kind of went through this crisis of faith where I had to rediscover it for myself. And when I did, I came out the other side with a desire to see the Lord's church thrive and survive. And so that's the heart that this is coming from as we kind of walk through this. All right, so let's jump into our content. I want to talk about re-energizing the church. And within that, I want to introduce you to something called the gears of change. And when I talk about the gears of change within this Re-Church process, I'm talking about 4 things. And these are the 4 things that we're going to explore in this episode. Number 1, we're going to talk about revival. That's changing what's happening in the heart of the leader, right? Number 2, we're going to talk about revision. Getting clear about the call of the ministry, what the ministry is called to do. We're going to talk about revitalize. The people on the team who are called to lead the church. And then finally, we're going to talk about rebuilding, which is crafting and drafting out the strategy for the future. Because I think if we lean into all 4 of those things, they begin to take us forward another level, right? And we're going to use Nehemiah for a base for a lot of this. But I'm only going to give you some of it, and I'll allow you the freedom to go back, and I'll share with you a resource at the end of this that if you really want to know some more, you really want to go deeper, I'll tell you exactly how to do this, all right? But I want you to catch this quote first. You don't need to change everything, you just need to change the right things. Now, as far as I know, I just made that up, right? But the point still stands, right? Like you don't need to change everything. Don't overwhelm yourself as a leader feeling like you've got to get everything right and you've got to get everything perfect because you don't. And I'm here to tell you it's impossible. You can't get everything right. You can't get everything perfect. You can't change everything or everybody. You just need to change the right thing. And see, that's the beauty of that imagery of a gear. When you think about a gear, you're talking about this one mechanism that when it turns, it is so interconnected to other mechanisms that turning this one thing, it will turn other things for you. And so what I'm saying to you is that if we could turn these four things, they will start to turn the other things in our churches for us, but we've got to grab a hold to it. All right. So we're going to use a backdrop of Nehemiah for this, but let's jump straight in and we're going to talk about these four gears of change. All right. Number one is revival. We're talking about revival in the heart of a leader. See, this is how Nehemiah transformed a nation, right? He started right here. He started with revival. And after he got his heart right, then he got the vision right. After he got the vision right, he got the people right. After he got the people right, then he actually began to get the nation right. And so one of the things that you've got to embrace is I have got to start with revival. So what are we talking about with revival? Is that there's some questions with each of these topics that I want you to ask, that I want you to answer, that I want you to wrestle with, that I want you to think about. But just four things for you to wrestle with as you think about re-church or breathing new energy, new life into the vision that God has given you. All right. Number one, revival. All right. Here's a question I want you to think about. What's the burden of your heart? Like, what's the burden of your heart? Like when Nehemiah, he asks how the people are doing. And when he hears that the people aren't doing well and that the wall is not going well, those two things break his heart. His heart gets broken, man. He starts weeping. He starts crying. He starts fasting. He starts praying. Man, if a brother stop eating because he upset, you know something is real deal, right? And so he starts to feel it. And this was a burden that was really seriously in his heart. And you've got to discover what that burden is for you. What is it that's moving you so much and so deeply to go into this and to wrestle with this idea? What is it that you're holding on to? Because the truth of the matter is that if you get the right reason for what you do, then you can begin to develop the right strategy and the longevity that you need to keep on doing it. One of the reasons that people don't stick in so many of the things they try is because their reasoning is wrong. Is that they do it for a paycheck. They do it because other people want them to do it. They do it because they feel pressured to. They do it because no one else will do it. And those reasons will carry you for a season. But if you're going to do it for the long haul, you have got to have a true burden and call from God that is challenging you forward to step up to the plate. And so what you've got to discover is what's the burden of your heart. The other thing that you want to discover is what is the great need around you? What is it when you look out there and you look at the community around you, you look at the people around you, what's out there that's breaking your heart? Maybe it's illiteracy, people not understanding how to read their own Bibles, even in the church. Maybe it's broken marriages. Maybe it's families with the fathers out of place. Whatever it is, I want you to look out there. Maybe it's schools that don't have the resources and tools they need to rightly educate a generation. Whatever it is, you have got to allow it to give birth to a revival in your heart that comes alongside the calling of God for your life. So you got to start with a revival. The second thing is you want to look at revision, right? You want to look at a revision. How do we begin to revisit the vision? You know, Nehemiah does something beautiful. When he gets to Jerusalem, he goes out at night. He begins to walk around and assess the wall. He doesn't tell anybody what he's doing yet. He just goes and he just looks, all right, where are we really at? Because here's the reality, is that if you're going to get great answers, it's got to start with great questions. Is that you have got to be willing to ask the hard questions about what God is doing in the church so that you can get to the hard answers about what God wants to do in the church, right? And so you've got to be willing to go in there. Nehemiah went, he says, no, I need to see where the walls really are. Right? I can't just be operating with some pipe dream. He says, let me go see what the people are living in every day. He says, I got to go visit this gate and see that it's been burned. I got to go visit this gate and see that it's been torn down. I got to go see where everything is so that I can begin to cast vision about where it needs to go. And so one of the things that you can do as a leader is that as you get ready to think about how to drive the vision forward, you need to look back and you need to ask yourself, where have we been? Because Nehemiah is not just comparing the current wall to his vision. He's comparing it to its original design. He's looking at the majesty of what this place used to be, and he's using that to compare to where it is right now, because that is what the people are going to connect with. You know, one of the hardest things about being a leader is that people don't see the vision that you see. People don't see the vision that you see. And so instead of always trying to move people to your vision, you need to learn how to move your vision to people's experience. You need to learn, how do I take the vision that God has given me and connect it with the experience that these people have had? These people have been in bondage for years. These people have been praying and begging to be freed from captivity, only to get free from captivity and come and live in a different type of bondage. Nehemiah knows this. And so he starts to go back and he starts to look at, where have we been? And so you've got to go back and you've got to look in the life of the church and ask yourself, when were we most successful? You know, what were some of the most successful programs that we did? You know, what was our heyday? What was happening in our heyday? Where were we strong? What people did we have that we've lost along the way? You know, what were those things that were so significant about where you were that really points to the strength of where the church is? And as you do that, now you can look and go, okay, now what potential impact could we have? You know, here's what you're trying to do. You're trying to bridge the gap between the past and the future. That's all. You're saying, okay, look, I see where God is leading me to take us, right? I see where we've been. So now I've got to translate that to a meeting place in the middle so that those who are here and who have been through the past can now see how we're going to connect it. You know, here's the thing to think about. How could you take something that worked really well 20 years ago, revitalize it so that it works well again today? You know, maybe it's Sunday school. How do you take Sunday school and revitalize it in such a way that it works today? Maybe it's virtual. Maybe you do it through breakout rooms in Zoom. People come in and you send each one of them to a classroom where they go in and they're in these individual classes and they're having Sunday school together, right? Whatever it is, discover where your church has been strong and where God has been faithful in the past. Figure out how you can connect that to the future. Number 3, you want to revitalize, right? We've talked about revival in the heart of the leader. We've talked about revision, getting clear on the vision, right? Connecting where you've been to where you're going. Now let's talk about revitalize, because now we've got to deal with the people who will serve the vision. There are a couple of questions that you want to ask. Number 1 is, who do you have on the team? Who do you have on the team? You know, who do you have on the team right now? What are their skill sets? What are their giftings? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? You know, what are the big things that they could do really, really well? What are the things you can trust them with? What are the areas where they're constantly dropping the ball? You know, you need to assess who you have working with you. Another thing that you need to assess, and this is an uncomfortable conversation, is you need to figure out, what are the unresolved conflicts on your team? You know, maybe there's some conflicts there. Maybe there are some people who have some issues with each other that they've never addressed. Maybe there's somebody on the team who's there in body, but they're not there in spirit. Their mind is not there. They never finish assignments, whatever it may be. You've got to figure out, where are we and what do we have? But then another thing that you've got to think about is, how will you consistently bring new people onto the team? All right. And I want to go so much deeper into this, but I'm going to give you a link to go to a challenge that I've set up where you can watch 4 very detailed videos on these topics. And I even go into some practical things underneath them, but you've got to begin to get your team renewed. You know, if you come out with a new vision and your team is still burned out, it's only a matter of time before your vision fizzles out. If you want your vision to go forward, you can't just cast a new vision, but you have got to revitalize your team who's going to help you execute the vision. You can't just cast a new vision. but you've got to revitalize your team who's going to help you execute the new vision. Because that team that's going to help you execute the new vision, as they go, so will your vision go. And so you want to revitalize them. And here it is, last but not least, now you want to rebuild. When you rediscover your passion, because let's make no mistake about it, as leaders, we often go through cycles. We go through times and seasons where we are so gifted at what we do that we can check out and nobody else know we're checked out. That we can fall into a rhythm of, we can show up well enough to preach on Sunday, but when it comes to just constantly trying to push the vision forward, we can hit seasons where we burn out. And so what I'm inviting you to do is just to go to the drawing board. And even if you feel like you're in a good season of life, just to go back to the drawing board and say, Lord, I'm stepping into a completely new paradigm of ministry. We're in a season where digital ministry is as relevant as physical ministry. Like, I never thought I would see the day. And I have avoided digital things as much as I can because they're invasive. They're always coming into your privacy, all these kind of things. And yet it's the reality I live in. Lord, I need you to help me lead through this next season, right? Go back and allow the Lord access to those hidden crevices of your heart so that he can look in, peek in, see where your fear is, to see where you're afraid, to see where you're scared, to see where you feel alone, where you're isolated, and come in and show you that his strength is made perfect in your weakness. Once you do that, then you can revision. You can bring a vision not from a place of desperation, but from a place of connectivity. You know, so many visions fall flat because they're good ideas and they're not God ideas. And when you go back to the drawing board and you allow the Lord to mold your heart and to soften that heart the way he needs to, give you a heart of flesh again, right? When you allow him to do that, now you can bring forth a vision that comes out of a sense of connectivity with God. I'm telling you, I have done ministry from a place of desperation. I've done it from a place of, I have to do it. I've done it from a place of, this is my job. I've done it from all these different places. And I'm telling you, nothing compares to doing it from a place of deep connectivity and sense of purpose and calling from God. And so when you do that, you produce a vision that is authentic, and it is a vision that people will be drawn to. Because I don't care what you say and what you do and how good of an actor, how good of a speaker you think you are, people can tell when you believe what you say. And so you want to cast a vision that is authentic. But then you want to make sure that you're leading the people who will lead the vision. As a leader, it is not your task. Nehemiah, he didn't go out there and say, you know what, I'm going to rebuild this wall one section at a time. No, he inspired the people to rebuild the wall. And if you want to have long-term success, you have got to involve other people, which means that you've got to spend a good chunk of your time caring for them. If you spend most of your time looking out for people and looking out for the leaders who will help you lead, everything changes. You know, I told our team to hold me accountable this year, is that I have 3 tasks: preach, pray, empower. Those are the things that I've got to be doing this year. If our church is going to grow, I've got to focus on those things. I've got to preach the best sermons that I can preach. I have got to pray like my life and the lives of everybody in our church depends on it. And then I've got to empower people to be who God has called them to be. If I'm going to embrace my call as an apostolic leader, a leader who is forward thinking, Paul says in Ephesians chapter 4 that these gifts were for the equipping of the saints for the work of ministry. These gifts didn't come to do all the work. They came to equip the saints to do the work. And so you've got to revitalize a team. And after you do that, finally, this is how we get to the other side. Now we rebuild. Now we ask ourselves, now that we've come through this process, what are we going to do differently? And how will we represent or represent the vision to our community? Listen, if we are serious about taking those next steps and turning the corner, I believe that God can use everything that we have to help us become everything he wants us to be. but you've got to step up to the plate. Listen, if this was good for you, I created something called the Church Challenge. And all you've got to do is click the link in the description. You can sign up for that challenge. It's absolutely free of charge. But I'm going to give you 4 videos over the course of a few days, of a little over a week. I'm going to give you 4 videos. I'm going to give you a free workbook, and I'm going to give you some tools that you need to really walk down this journey and begin to start the process of really re-energizing your church. All you got to do is click the link in the bio. You can grab it. It's completely free, and you'll get some of the tools that you need to take those next steps. Listen, thank you for joining us for the first episode of the Digital Discipleship Podcast. This is just the beginning. This is just the start. There's so much more to come, and I look forward to seeing you again on the other side. Until then, keep the gears turning.